Okay, so when you open 3D Paint, we want to choose New, and you'll have your brand new paint window open. On the left-hand side, you'll see here the pencil instructions for the step-by-step how to draw. And just so you know, as we're working through paint, we're actually going to use how to draw step-by-step tutorial instructions that you would find online or in a book that are technically for drawing by hand. We're just going to use the same exact steps, but in paint. So that's something for you to know. If you like doing this, you can actually go online and search any how to draw step-by-step tutorials and use the steps they show you in paint. There are obviously some differences because it's not a pencil that you can control. There are different shapes and things like that, but I'll show you some tips and tricks to be able to make paint drawings look really close to step-by-step drawing instructions. So if we look at the paint window, just a little information, and we will go through some more tools as we need them. But the two main areas that we're going to look at is the brush area and 2D shapes. So across the top, we have menu categories or groups. And once you're in the group, you have your tools to the right. We've got the marker, the eraser is in this area, the paint bucket is in this area. We've got the colors, things like that. Under 2D shapes, we have lines, triangles, squares, all the different shapes. There are other areas that you'll be able to kind of play around with later, but for now, these are the two places that we'll be. The other thing to note is the zoom area. If you're zoomed in real close, sometimes you will need to zoom, but it's important that you come back to 100 often, just so that you have a good perspective of, how big everything is compared to just a normal canvas. Okay. So what we're going to do is we'll look at our our pencil instructions. We're going to start in the upper left corner, and we just have a rectangle in the middle of our canvas. So we want to go to 2D shapes. We want to choose the square. Now I know we need a rectangle, but the shape is just called a square. We can draw a rectangle. So notice on your how to draw, we do need some space around the rectangle for the rest of our pencil. And you're just going to draw your rectangle. And a few things you'll notice when you let go, if you hit enter right away, or you click outside, you will paint down the rectangle. At this point, I can't change anything about this. I can't do a thing to it. I can click all around, but I can't select this rectangle again. So undo is our best friend. Let's undo, and let's draw that rectangle again. So the one thing about paint is it's not very forgiving once you paint down an item. So you have to work with it when it's live. You can see the little marching ants. You can describe the dash lines that are moving. We call those marching ants. So you want to work with this when it's live. Okay. Now to the right, we can change the color of the outline, the color of the fill, the thickness. So we do want to make this a little bit thinner because we're not trying, to have big, thick lines all around our drawings. We do want the edges to be thinner. You don't want them itty bitty thin because when you fill the color, it can create some issues then. But like a 3-point the 3 pixel width is pretty good. Some of the other options like the sticker opacity, we don't really have to worry about that as much, or the make 3D. You can play with those another day. So for today, this is what I want. It looks good. And we're going to click the check mark to commit and paint that down. Now, if we look in the next box, now you can see on the top of the pencil is the eraser. Now, the thing is if you look on our shapes, I don't have a shape that has, if I zoom in here, Let's zoom in on my pencil spot here. I don't have a shape that has a rounded edge on top and a squared off 90-degree edge on the bottom. We don't have any shape like that. But I do have a rounded rectangle. I do have a rounded rectangle that I can draw. And what I can do is if I draw my rounded rectangle, just let me fix that. Uh-oh, I painted it down. If I draw my rounded rectangle and I overlap it, I know this does not look like the finished product up top on my pencil steps. Can you imagine that if I were to erase this bottom section, it would look like I had an eraser on top or something close? You know, maybe I want to make the top a little bit taller, right? So you can kind of play around with this a little bit and hit the check mark to commit. And if you can imagine this area right down here being gone, it looks really close to my eraser. So we're going to go to our brushes, choose the eraser tool. Now, one thing I want you to notice, if you look closely, you have the little crosshair, but there's a circle, a gray circle that's traveling with the crosshair. That's my eraser. And if you notice, everything's fine here, but it's so big that I just erased part of my pencil. So let's undo. And let's bring down our thickness. And let's zoom in on our picture. Okay, use those scroll bars. So now that I've zoomed in, I can erase. Now, a tip with erasing, if you go through and you hold the mouse down and you just do a big erase and you realize, oh, I just erased too much. When you undo, it's going to undo everything since the last click. Every time you click and let go, it's a new undo. So when I'm erasing, I'll erase in small bursts so that if I make a mistake, I don't undo a bunch of work. Okay, if you're going through like this, erasing a bunch of stuff, and then you make a mistake and you undo it, now everything is back. Maybe you didn't want everything back. Maybe you just wanted the last little tiny part. So if you erase in bursts, it gives you a little more control when you're undoing. Okay. Now I still have, this is not a big deal at all. You can totally leave that there. But I can be kind of a perfectionist. So I'm going to make my eraser even smaller. And oops, see what I just did? Okay, maybe I should not be a perfectionist. There we go. Okay, that's close enough. So I'm going to zoom out back to 100, just so I have a good visual of what I have happening here. Okay, it's not perfect. It's a little puffier than the sample, but we don't have to be exact. This is art. You can be, express yourself your own way. So that looks like it could be an eraser. So we're going to move on. All right, so the next piece we have on our instructions is the part of the pencil that we sharpen, right? Now, if you notice, this looks hand-drawn. And you can do a hand drawing. You can go into your brushes and pick a marker and you can try and draw. Oops. Let's make that black. You can go in and draw this, and that's fine. The only thing is everything looks so nice and straight. It'd be nice to make this straight too. So we're going to practice with our line tools. So I'm going to 2D shapes. I'm going to grab my line tool. And I'm going to start in the corner here, and I'm going to draw a line down here. I'm going to commit it, go back to the line tool, start. Let me zoom in for you so you can see a little bit better. Let's start down here and draw my line up top. I'll commit it. That's not perfect, and that's okay. Again, it is art, and when we sharpen pencils, they don't sharpen perfectly anyway. And then remember, I'm zoomed in so everything looks thicker. There's my 100%, right? Then I'm going to go in and draw the part that gets sharpened, right? The sharpened areas. And again, we don't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be exactly like the instructions. We do want, to be able to tell it's a pencil. Okay, so looks pretty close to our picture. Let me zoom out so we can check it. So if I look at my next instruction right here, now you'll notice the line has disappeared where my sharpened area is, and I have a new little line at the bottom. So that's going to take some erasing, right? Let me zoom in. So I need to do a little erasing here. Oops. Again, that would have been nice if I would have done the short bursts like I like to do. Okay, so small little chunks getting erased. Okay, there we go. And then we need the little line where the lead is going to be. Okay, let me zoom back out. And we'll draw a little line here that's going to be the cutoff for where lead is. And it's okay if it's a little bit thick. You'll see why in a second. Okay, so the next thing we have here is we've got, let me make a note on this drawing here for you. We've got, oh goodness. We've got these lines. So this is like where the metal piece is, and that's where like the edges of the pencil are, how it's like the sides are kind of flat. So those lines need to be added. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit here. Okay, so let's go back to 2D shapes. Let's get our line tool. And one thing about the line is if you hold the shift key down, you can actually make a perfectly straight line. Okay, so again, oops. Okay. I just pasted. That must be the last thing that got copied. So let me undo and go back to the line. And again, when I draw the line, if I just draw, it can be kind of crooked. If you hold shift, it makes a straight line. And then now I've got 2 vertical lines. And if you notice, let me zoom in here. It's not letting me zoom in over here. If you notice, the vertical lines actually touch the top of the little zigzags. So I'm going to start at the top of my zigzag, and I'm going to draw a vertical line, hold the shift key, and that'll make a straight line. Commit. So remember, you can see I went from the top of my zigzag up to the line, hold shift to make a straight line, and we're good. Now my pencil looks like a really long pencil. It's a brand new one, hasn't been sharpened. The example that we have looks like a little bit of a shorter pencil. It doesn't matter. Pencils are different, right? Now if we look at the last pencil in our steps, we've got some parts filled in with what would be color if you saw it like on the internet or probably in a book. So now it's your turn to color in the pencil. So if we go to brushes up top, we want the paint bucket. Choose your color. You can customize a color. So like let's say you want to fill the pencil, the main part of the pencil, and you think this color is just too orange. If you go to custom, you can kind of mess around a little bit with the type of color. So if you want it to look a little more glossy, Okay, that has like a gradient to it that makes it look kind of glossy, which is pretty cool. So it's like shading. Or just matte is more of a regular type shading. Okay, so we can kind of mess around with any of those. Okay. If you don't want this actual color, if you click add color, you can actually go in and adjust a little bit. So let's say maybe I want my pencil to be a little more of this type of a color. So again, to customize the color, choose your base color. Down at the bottom, you'll click the plus sign to add a color, and you can go kind of play around with the color. Now with the paint bucket, the tolerance can change, and that kind of helps figure out, you know, exactly where you want the paint to fill from. So you can play around with that a little bit. But we're going to go through and start filling in the colors based on what a pencil usually looks like, right? And I forgot to use my new color here, so I'm going to change that. And if you'll notice, sometimes it kind of bleeds into the black. I'm not quite sure why that is happening. Kind of fills a little to the edge. Maybe that has to do with the tolerance. Let's see what it says. Adjust the precision of your fill. If you want to change the entire color of your shape, you want to go to 100. Okay. So the lower the tolerance, the less of this grayness we're going to get. So let's take a look at that. So if my tolerance is really low, let's see if that fixes the grayness. Interesting. So kind of play around with that. Anything that you learn about that tolerance, let me know what you find out, because that's kind of a new one to me. I'm not quite sure how that works. Oops. Be careful when you're filling, especially if there's a small area. You'll want to zoom in. And fill. Now, one thing that's important to note, and I'm going to mess with this just a little bit. So let's say for whatever reason, okay, let me zoom out a little bit. For whatever reason, when you drew this last little part here, you didn't draw it all the way. There was like a gap. What you're going to notice when you try to fill your area is it'll like overflow. If you get an overflow, okay, so let me try this again. Let me make a little gap here. Okay, so let's say you go to fill. Let's try this some more. Erase a little bit more here, because this is going to happen at some point to many of you. Okay, so we're going to pretend that when you drew your line, you didn't close everything up. So when you go to fill, it's going to overflow into an area you didn't want, or it'll overflow into the whole entire canvas. Definitely undo. Okay, undo is your best friend, right? So undo, and then zoom in to the area you're trying to fill, and just make sure that there aren't any gaps. So because I have a gap here, let me get black. I'm going to get my marker, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to fill that little spot in, so that now when I do my paint bucket, I can get the brown where I need it, and I can get the black where I need it. And then let's zoom back out to 100. And there's my finished pencil. Now, when you're done, we want to save. And you actually, it's a good thing to save along the way, because, you know, if something happens and everything gets deleted, then all of your work is gone. So if you go to the menu, you want to save as or save. Usually the very first time you save something, you want to choose save as. We want to save it as an image. Now mine screen looks a little different than yours. On the left side, you should see your student number, but having it save in pictures is good. So make sure it says pictures, but it'll be under your student number, not this PC. You're going to change untitled to pencil. And the type is PNG, and that's what you want to leave it as. If you change it to any of these other options, the file will get pixelated and fuzzy. And if you want to go back in tomorrow or later and make any adjustments, the file really, or the picture really isn't going to be very good quality. And it's really hard to start filling in later. It looks like fuzzy. So you want to leave it PNG. Oops. So pencil, PNG, save. And you'll notice that across the top, you should see it change to pencil. And that's it. So finish your pencil, save it. When you're done, you're going to go to Menu, New. Make sure it was saved. Mine is not saving. Not sure why it didn't save before, but make sure it saves. Go New, and then pick another picture to draw. And that's it.